Well, since the results of the polls that I posted asking you which series you'd like me to do a review and top 10 video on came out to a tie, I've decided that this month I'll do G1 followed by Armada sometime next month. So here it is, my review and top 10 of the original Transformers series, the one that started it all. Now I could go into this whole detailed history about how Transformers came to be, how it was all these different lines that Hasbro brought over from Japan and worked with Marvel to create this unified story around them, or that the show was part of this 3-part marketing strategy of toys, comics, and a cartoon that worked so well for them before with G.I. Joe. Or that how G.I. Joe, in this long, strange turn of events, is actually what many of the toys that would become Transformers originated from. No, let's just keep it simple and talk about the cartoon, which ran from 1984 to 1987. 1987. Now why does that year sound so familiar? Oh right, well speaking of movies, the original 1986 animated movie won't be on this list, because, let's face it, if it was, it would be number 1, without a doubt. So with that out of the way, let's get to it, shall we? Here are my picks for the top 10 best episodes of Transformers Generation 1. Number 10. Call of the Primitives. This episode makes the top 10 purely because it's the best looking episode in the entire series. I mean, it's still not without its animation errors and weird plot points, but man, there's scenes in this episode that are just absolutely gorgeous. I wish the entire series was animated by Studio Ox. Anyways, this episode is about the mysterious character Primacron, who claims to have created Unicron and his latest entity of destruction, Tornadron, and his former assistant, who calls all the Transformers primitives to fight this energy-devouring monstrosity, from the smallest cassette to the biggest Trypticon. But they prove to be no match for this energy vampire. With only Grimlock remaining, he travels to Primacron's location, where with the flick of a switch, Tornadron is defeated and everyone is restored. Again, this episode isn't the best written, and it certainly has some extremely weird plot points that conflict with continuity going forward, namely the origins of Unicron and Primus. But this episode must be on the top 10 solely due to its incredible designs and animation by Studio Ox. Number 9. Starscreams Ghost. The episode that established Starscream's immortal spark. An aspect of Starscream that would be homaged in almost every iteration of Starscream from this point on. From Beast Wars to Energon to Animated to Power of the Primes. And we'd get toys based off of it for years to come. Seriously, the chances of getting a transparent ghost version of any given Starscream mold is about as likely as getting a Thundercracker and Skywarp repaint. So despite the title, this episode follows Octane, who's on the run from Galvatron and is in sort of Autobot protective custody. Galvatron's assassins are no match for the comedy of errors that follow Octane. Seriously, if Octane didn't trip over everything, I'd say he was the Transformers version of Domino. Also, I really like his and Sandstorm's relationship. I especially love how they're just hanging out in this space bar, chatting while all this chaos is surrounding them. It's a shame that this is literally all the characterization Sandstorm would get in the cartoon. Eventually, Octane ends up in the Decepticon catacombs, on the run from Cyclonus, Scourge, and the Sweeps. And here is where we finally see the titular character of the episode. Starscream possesses Cyclonus and orchestrates this whole thing where he manages to deliver Galvatron to the Autobots and takes over the Decepticons. But unfortunately this lasts for about 3 seconds, as it seems Galvatron managed to escape the Autobots. Which in my opinion is kind of a wasted opportunity. I think it would have been really interesting to see Starscream, in possession of Cyclonus, finally rule the Decepticons. I would have loved to see how long he could remain in control of both Cyclonus' body and the Decepticon army. It could have been a sort of Loki type of situation. Oh well. Number 8. The Search for Alphatron. The first appearance of true female Transformers before the introduction of series mainstay RC in Transformers the movie. This is kind of a weird episode when you think about the meta of the series. At the end of the day, this is a cartoon made to sell toys, and boys' toys at that, before the idea of toys not being specific to one gender or the other were the social norm. So then why make an episode entirely dedicated to a group of female characters that wouldn't even receive official toys until 20 to 30 or more years later? And why is it that all their quote-unquote boyfriends all have these predominantly red color schemes? Is red an attractive color to female Transformers? Or is it just a coincidence? Oh, and as for the synopsis, the girls steal some energon from Shockwave. He catches them, they escape to their secret base, but Shockwave finds their location. Elita 1 is captured. Megatron gloats to Optimus Prime that he's kidnapped his girlfriend. Optimus rushes to save her, but gets captured himself. He's about to be executed when Elita uses her time-stopping power to save him, but doing so drains her life force. He rushes her to Alphatron, who says that Optimus has to quote-unquote interface with her to save her life. And basically the girls show off how badass they are, and they separate once again, with the ladies staying on Cybertron and the gents going back to Earth. Again, just an odd one-off episode when you consider the meta that this is supposed to be a half-hour Boys Toys commercial, which features girl robots who would never even get toys until decades later. Don't get me wrong, I obviously love this episode, that's why it's on this list, and more fembots are always welcome. I'm just surprised it was made, all things considered. Also, whatever happened to Elita's crew? We never see them again. What do you think happened to them? Did they get smushed when Unicron attacks Cybertron in Transformers the movie? Did they go off on a girls' night out to Caminus and never came back? Who knows? Number 7. The Rebirth, Part 2. I had trouble choosing which part to focus on for this list, but I think Part 2 is the strongest out of the three. I was tempted to choose Part 1 because it does a great job of introducing a whole lot of new characters, including my boy Sixshot. And Part 3 is obviously special for being the final episode of Transformers Generation 1. But since the bulk of this three-parter is focused on the introduction of the new Headmaster and Target Master toys, and that's what takes place in this episode, I chose Part 2 as the standout. As we left off from Part 1, the Autobot Headmasters have completed their modifications and go and rescue their comrades from the Decepticons. Zarek and the Hive, having witnessed the combined strength of the Autobots and the Nebulons, abduct the Decepticons and force them to become their Headmaster and Target Master partners. Back on Cybertron, Optimus Prime uses the Matrix in order to access Vector Sigma and speak to Alphatron, who exposits to Optimus that the key to the plasma energy chamber must not be destroyed and foretells the coming of a new golden age for Cybertron. On Nebulos, the Hive bond with their Decepticon partners and set out to attack the Autobots and steal the key. Brainstorm, upset that they stole his Headmaster idea, scans Nightstick to create their own Autobot Target Masters. Optimus Prime arrives on Nebulos and gets caught up on what's been going on. They go back to get the key, but Scorponok rises up from underground. Like I said, this is where the main lot of this three-parter takes place. Not just the introduction of the new toy gimmicks for this year, but also the whole prophecy of the new golden age of Cybertron. Number 6. Fire in the Sky. Ah, the episode that launched 1,000 ships. One of the very few episodes of Transformers where we get to see a sneak peek of what the characters did before the war. And one of the fewer still where there's a character who changes allegiances. And obviously the introduction of one of my favorite characters, Jetfire, or Skyfire as he's called in the cartoon. We start off with Spike and the Autobots playing in the snow, but enough cuteness, because meanwhile the Decepticons are harnessing the power of a crystal that somehow extends to the core of the Earth. As they're digging, they uncover a large robot, who turns out to be Skyfire, a long-lost friend of Starscream from before the war, back when they were both explorers. They revive Skyfire and initiate him into the Decepticons. Skyfire has conflicts, and after refusing to execute the Autobots, Starscream shoots his old friend. The Autobots repair him, and, after a cool fight between Optimus and Megatron, he switches sides. Starscream and Skyfire have a dogfight, but in his weakened state, he buries himself along with the crystal in an avalanche. And the episode ends with the Autobots mourning their lost new ally. Although a few episodes later they would dig him up like nothing happened when they need to bum a ride. Some friends they are. Again, this is an interesting episode for the reasons I mentioned previously. And Jetfire and Starscream's relationship before the war would be something referenced in other media such as the War for Cybertron video game. Number 5. Enter the Nightbird. This is another great G1 episode, and kind of the introduction of the first female Transformer, but not? But then kind of? This episode is all about Nightbird, a ninja robot created by Dr. Fujiyama, the famous scientist. What, you haven't heard of Dr. Fujiyama? He's a famous scientist, you know. Anyways, she is stolen by the Decepticons, who upgrade her and reprogram her to steal the world energy chip from the Autobots. She infiltrates the Autobots' base through the open top of the volcano. Why isn't this sealed off? If the Autobots are so concerned about the Decepticons getting into their base to place metal sensing alarms in the panels at the beginning of the show, why haven't they closed off their roof? They do know the Decepticons can fly, right? Anyways, Nightbird steals the chip and slips away with the Autobots being no match for her. The Autobots pursue her. By the way, isn't it funny that the guy named Cliffjumper can't actually jump up a cliff? Starscream is jealous that Megatron is paying Nightbird so much attention. The Autobots manage to capture her, and Megatron and the Decepticons go to rescue his new squeeze. As they fight, the spurned Starscream escapes and uses his null rays to neutralize Nightbird. The end of the episode saying that Nightbird has been deprogrammed and locked up forever, but it doesn't seem like she intends to stay that way. Like I said at the beginning, this is sort of the first introduction of a female Transformer, since this episode aired before the search for Alphatron. But Nightbird is a human-built robot and she doesn't transform. Although she was reprogrammed by the Decepticons, and in later fiction, she would gain not one, but two transformations, her car mode and a swan mode. Yep, that's a swan mode. Number 4, Revenge of Bruticus. Now this is an interesting episode, since it takes place immediately after the last episode, Starscream's Brigade, but it's technically not a two-parter. It almost hints at Transformers as a linear narrative, which is pretty rare for any cartoon at that time. Most of the time it's just a hodgepodge of random stories. Again, other than actual multi-part episodes. Like I said, picking up where the last episode left off, Starscream and his brigade are exiled on an asteroid, which blasts off toes to Cybertron, where Shockwave is performing drills with his drones. I guess Shockwave did have drones in G1 too. Well, what follows is some memorable moments that we'd see referenced in later years in everything from video games to toys. But basically, having defeated the lone Sentinel Shockwave, the Combaticons have taken over Cybertron. Onslaught rewires the space bridge in such a way that it pushes the Earth into the sun. I'd say that's not how that works, but we are talking about a machine that instantly transports matter over vast distances. So maybe that's possible? And in one of the very few times you'll see in the show, the Autobots and Decepticons are forced to work together to defeat Bruticus and save the Earth. This is actually a pretty well written episode. I mean, at least for a cartoon of this time. It even uses the rule of 3 with Shockwave's projector. Once when Shockwave is using it to test his drones, again when he and Starscream use it to distract the Combaticons, and finally at the end when they pretend to destroy Bruticus in front of the Autobots. It also helps that it features one of my favorite combiner teams. Number 3, City of Steel. How can I not include the episode that was essentially the inspiration for the Transformers Devastation video game, or at least partially, and has the one Optimus Prime toy that Hasbro still hasn't done yet, and I wish they would. Seriously, how has Hasbro not done a repaint of Skullcruncher with an Optimus Prime head yet? So this episode is all about Megatron's brilliant plan to take over New York City and transform it into a new Cybertronian city one building at a time. Optimus Prime gets captured and disassembled, and his parts are used in the construction of various things, including the aforementioned Alligatorcon. The Autobots rescue him and work on finding and reattaching his pieces. After Devastator does his best King Kong impression, Optimus blasts him out the building, and that's pretty much the end of Megatron's plan. This is just a classic G1 episode. Just pure camp, and again, I'm surprised they haven't done an official Alligator Optimus Prime toy yet. Although I wouldn't mind some Decepticon yellow caps either. Heck, not to go on about if BotCon was still around again, but I could totally see that Optimus being one of the exclusives, along with a Decepticon taxi troop builder. Number 2, The Return of Optimus Prime, Part 1. After the death of Optimus Prime in Transformers the movie, and his cruel zombification in Dark Awakening, fans were demanding a true resurrection of the Autobot leader. And that's exactly what this two-parter is. But for this list, I chose Part 1 as the better of the two, and it's the part in which the actual return of Optimus Prime occurs. The episode is about a couple scientists, or more accurately, a scientist couple, testing a heat-resistant metal covering their spaceship. They come across the body of Optimus Prime and return him to Earth, but in the process they also discover the hate plague. The one guy and the girl's father blame the Transformers for the scar on the guy's face, and because that seems a little too petty to hold such a major grudge for, later the girl is paralyzed when the Decepticons attack, looking to steal the experimental metal. The two come up with the idea to infect the Autobots with the hate plague by luring them in with Optimus Prime's body. And well, long story short, it works. with the plague having spread across the planet, and seemingly across the galaxy as well, Rodimus Prime tasks Skylynx with finding a Quintesson to revive Optimus Prime. And they make good on their promises, as Optimus Prime is revived and here to stay. At least until the end of the series in a few episodes. If you're looking for the return of Optimus Prime, this is it. The next episode is basically just about curing the hate plague, but this first one is where most of the story happens. And of course, the triumphant resurrection of the Autobot leader. Number 1, Wardon. Well, this is it. In my opinion, the best episode in all of the original Transformers series. This episode tells the origins of Optimus Prime himself. The newly constructed aerial bots are idolizing the Decepticons when they are tricked and sent into the past. There they meet Orion Pax, his best friend Dion, and girlfriend Ariel, who also seem to admire these new flying robots that we'd come to know as the Decepticons. They'd soon get to meet them, namely their leader Megatron, who promptly orders the Decepticons to attack, mortally wounding the unsuspecting Autobots. When the aerial bots return, they find the lifeless Orion Pax and rush to find someone who can help, which they do in the form of A3, the young Alphatron. He rebuilds the young naive Orion Pax into the powerful heroic Optimus Prime, and he promises to do the same thing for Ariel, thinking to himself that he'll rename her Alita 1. No mention of poor Dion though. The aerial bots, now firm in their knowledge that the Decepticons are evil, prepare to sacrifice themselves in order to prevent them from getting a warehouse full of Energon. Lucky for them, the Autobots in the present have recalled them just in time, and after defeating an eHobby exclusive Omega Supreme ray paint, the aerial bots reminisce with their new old pal Optimus Prime. There you go. The episode's so good they made a toy dedicated to it. It gives us so much backstory, a brief glimpse of Cybertron at the beginning of the war, as well as the origins of both Optimus Prime and Alita 1, and like I mentioned, nothing on the fate of poor Dion. It's a popular fan theory that Alphatron, or A3, reused the designs he used to make Optimus Prime with Dion to turn him into Ultra Magnus, although other popular theories peg him as either being Ironhide or Cup. What do you think? Who did Dion become? Or did he just die? Well, there you go. My choices for the top 10 best episodes of G1. The Transformers. The original series. The one that started it all. Rewatching all 98 episodes of this cartoon, there was so much that I had forgotten about. There was even stuff in this series I didn't realize were homaged in later series. Of course, this show has some major problems. It's a product of its time. There's tons of animation and continuity errors in every single episode. Characters are off-model more often than they're on-model, and there's no overarching storyline of any kind. But this series still has loads of charm. There's so many episodes and so many characters that anyone can find one to love, which is kind of the beauty of Transformers. What do you think? What are your favorite episodes of G1? As always, let me know down in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, ring the bell, share, all that fun stuff. And I'll see you here next month for the other series that tied in my poll with this one, Transformers Armada. So look forward to that sometime in February, and I'll see you next time.